Welcome to Village TV. My name is Etienne. There's a fly. I'm gonna go fetch my fly swat and just kill this bastard quickly. I'm not gonna talk too much. We're gonna get right to the point. Our very first segment is about social media. Who else has got fly problems? I hope everyone, otherwise we're dirty. But we're not. I clean often. So getting right to it, you see that? It went right past the lens, the fly. Let's get to our first segment called Spotted on the Note. Our first segment, Spotted on Stanford notice board. The Stanford Rotary Winter Warmth Campaign. They do awesome work. They do beanies, scarves, mittens, crochet blankets, babies and toddler blankets, jerseys, fleece tops for children. Sarah from Soul Stitching crocheted 42 beanies. Sarah, beanies off to you. Support the Winter Warmth Project. Herman Boyson wants to know who dumped this behind his house. Dude, who are you? So please go pick it up. Herman Boyson's backyard is not your dumping ground. Nareen Christians. Nareen wants to know, why does she have to go sign a second time for her RDB house? Is there anyone that can answer this question for Nareen? Nareen, I also do not understand. One such post came from Paul Sanders, a can-do kind of guy, if you ask me, if you remember the Stanford Festival and his involvement in that. So he asked about the playground and what the village could do to better it, because it's, at the moment, I was there and I took some footage. It's quite a dangerous place for kids. One thing that stood out is the willingness of the community to help. And I Skyped with Paul, and this is what he had to say.
One thing that struck me first was how quickly people were to react when Liz wrote about the church and the garden that obviously needed some upkeep. And literally the following day, there were people in there mowing and pulling out weeds, and it was just quite incredible, kind of, I suppose, the power of the media in a sense. And I just thought, well, you know, this is obviously the playgrounds, I think, been in the back of a lot of people's minds. And it was actually quite mind-blowing how many people kind of put up their hands, from people offering paint to obviously Harry van der Bank obviously offering extra timber and hands on deck that he's got to help build things. So I think now we have to think about, do we want to just repair the playground, or do we want to add some extensions? What else can kind of be put in that big area? So I think it's an opportunity for us kind of as Stanford to not only kind of upgrade our playground, but obviously take away some pretty hazardous things that are currently on the current playground. And yeah, I think take a bit of pride and just give our kids a place to play that's safe. I think even when it came to the festival, I think there were a lot of kids also playing in that playground. So I think it would be a nice opportunity to see how we can refurbish the playground, what we can add. And yeah, thanks to all the people, you know, Harry, Charles, Bia, and obviously Marion and a few others who've obviously offered to contribute hands, money, timber, and whatever else it is. So hopefully from this little Stanford TV video, we can hopefully get some more hands on deck. The fence on the outside is also something that we need to look at. It almost becomes like a template for us to do something fun and colorful, and take pride in our playground that obviously sits right outside Stanford Kitchen, where a lot of outside visitors also kind of have, you know, their kids also use the playground. We obviously know about the other playground. Obviously we're getting some wood sorted for the skateboard ramp, so that's going to be sorted. I know I think Roz has helped out with organising wood there.
And then I went with my friend Liz Clark from Stanford News. So if you don't know Liz Clark, and if you are not subscribed to Stanford News, I think you should. We spoke to Charles Cornelius, a representative at the municipal offices, can-do kind of guy if you ask me, and here's what he had to say.
The paving of Long and Short Market Street was identified as a need in the IDP as part of the revitalization of the CBD, and Stanford Heritage or Stanford Conservation played a major role in putting the plans together, and along with our engineers and Mr. Myberg, they came up with a project plan to implement it. It is all good and well that we do have a heritage, and it's nice, but we must also bear in mind that in order for Stanford to be a sustainable village, we do need investment, and then we must do a balancing act when we consider these things. I think Stanford South too needs to be more involved in future projects. Most of the historical residents of Stanford reside in Stanford South, so I think we need to get more input from them as to what they perceive as heritage. I know they might not have the expertise that the people in Stanford North have, but they do have the historical knowledge of the town.
You can go read more about what Charles Cornelius had to say. There's also an article about Catherine Francis, the angel voice of Stanford, and many other things. So please go subscribe and read the Stanford News. Support local media. Don't blame me if it's wrong. I got it from the South African Weather Bureau. I was walking down to the river at the bottom of Adderley Street where the river service road is, and getting down to the bottom I saw some reeds were being cut or were already cut, and I was wondering who would cut reeds, why would you cut it? So after a few inquiries I found out that a local resident named Butch did it himself. So I wanted to know why, and I had an interview with him, and this is what he had to say.
I've been here for 8 years, and the view of the river is quite exceptional from our home, and we discovered after a while that the reeds were actually growing to a stage where you couldn't see the river at all. And so I took it upon myself to cut the reeds down, and I've done that on a number of occasions. I don't know whether I've offended anybody, but certainly most of the comments I've had are very favourable. People have actually asked if I wouldn't mind extending the cutting a little bit further, and last week I did about another 30 or 40 metres, and I've been asked to do another 40 or 50 metres this week, and we're going to keep appraising the situation and receiving comments and seeing how it goes. If the reeds are not controlled somehow, the whole estuary will eventually fill up with reeds, and that will increase the chance of flooding of properties, but also make the river non-navigable to canoes and river paddlers and so on. There will be a lot of different views. Some people will advocate their removal, some will not. But it's not just the village that's got a problem. I think the farmers and the wider community all need to have a look at this, and the agricultural and fisheries people, the estuary forum. There's so many groups involved, and there's a lot of conflicts of interest, I'm sure. But and I'm just a novice, and I'm just trying to get involved and see what I can do to help the wider community, and maybe encourage more people to get actively involved in the village. But I think the overall benefits to the village would be evident if we cut more reeds down and find some way of controlling them.
So now I also understand why they cut the reeds, and maybe you understand too. It's for everyone's benefit. Klein River Cheese, they're right around the corner from me. They won quite a few big awards. Have a look.
The South African Dairy Championships annually creates a unique platform to promote excellence in the dairy industry. This championships has become the national standard against which South African manufacturers measure themselves every year.
We opened the 2022 South African Dairy Championships on the 10th of January, and on the 1st of February all entries were closed, and at that stage we had 920 products entered.
The Qualité emblem is recognized as the only mark of excellence for dairy products in South Africa. Only dairy products of exceptional quality can receive a Qualité award. A total of 26 Qualités for this year. 2 to Klein River Cheese.
And last but not least, we've got a segment about gardening. I call it Green Fever with Warren Stechman. He tells us how to make your own potting soil. Go Warren.
Village TV has invited me to share with you some of my favorite gardening tips and tricks, and today I thought I'll start with one of my best gardening hacks, and that is how to make your own potting soil. As we've all learnt at some point, not all potting soils are made equal, and sometimes it's best to take matters into your own hands. Fortunately, most of the ingredients are readily available and you can make a high quality potting soil at home anytime you need one. So what you're going to need is some coconut peat or cocoa peat. You plunge that into a bucket of water. It's usually a 10-litre bucket and 3 litres of water. You're going to need some compost of any description, but I prefer using something that has a nice friable consistency like this mushroom compost from Nation Mushrooms, which has been sifted. It's got no weed seeds in it, it's got no clumps of rocks or plastic, anything like that. And then we have our perlite. Let me just pull that out. Perlite is expanded volcanic glass. When you work with it, it's best to wear a mask, but I've wet this perlite, so it's not really going to be a problem for me today, but it is terribly dusty and it will make you cough. It's not good for your lungs, so do wear a dust mask. The great thing about this mix is that you can adjust it to your requirements. If you're making a cactus mix, you can add a bit of sand or add some more perlite. All in all, this is a great general potting mix that can be adjusted for a variety of plants. It can be used for indoor and outdoor plants, and I'll show you a trick with the outdoor plants later. You can measure or you can eyeball it, and all you need to do then is put in equal amounts of each ingredient. So I've got my coconut coir in there. I'll just scooch it over to one side, and now I'm going to add my compost. So I'm using my hands. You can use a jug or whatever you have. Now I'm adding my perlite. So it's about 2 and 1 part perlite. I might increase the perlite if I'm doing something that needs a very, very free draining soil, but 2 to 1 should be about right. And now you're just going to mix all of that together. Now at this stage you'll start to get a feeling for the potting soil, and what you really want is you want it to be light and fluffy, or light and spongy, so that there's no chance of it becoming compacted and blocked. Because what you find very often is people put ordinary garden soil into their potting mixes, and over time the pores become clogged, the soil gets heavy, and you'll often see, even though it's wet, it sometimes starts to pull away from the sides of the pot. Now that scenario is what we're trying to avoid here by using plenty of organic material, the coconut, and of course the compost. So now we're ready to use our beautiful potting soil, and one of the things everyone always asks me when they come to the nursery is, do I need to add stones in the bottom of my pot? And generally you don't, especially in a small pot like this. You don't want to add a lot of stones and take up even more space which could have been used for the roots. The best thing to do is look for a broken pot. We always have plenty of these in the nursery. Smash it, and once you've got it into a few little fragments like that, you can take it and you can just place it over the drainage hole, and there you go. Now add your potting soil. You can just check the level of the pot. You want your plant to be slightly lower than the lip, but we definitely are not going to cover this plant higher than what it is in the pot right now. That is a recipe for instant plant death. So there we go. And you can just take your hands. This is a very small pot, so sometimes if it's a larger pot, you can just pat it. But this one you'll just have to squeeze, and out comes the plant. The roots don't look very root bound, but you can give them a light tickle if you want, just to make sure that you break up that pattern of going round and round, and in it goes. And now you can fill in the soil around the root ball, and after that you're ready to water. So your plants are ready to go outside or indoors. If they are going indoors, people often ask, how often do I water? It depends very much on where they planted in your house, but as a rule of thumb, every 7 to 10 days would be a safe bet. And then when putting your plants outside, I always like to take out a little insurance policy and add some water retention crystals to the mix. And you just follow the manufacturer's instructions. Add these to your mix. You can either add it in at the time that you're ready to put the plant in, or you can add it into the dry mix. Just make sure that the mix isn't wet already, otherwise it will start swelling and sticking to your hands and it becomes a mess. Join us next week when we take a look at how to plant a tree. It's autumn and it's the best time of year to plant your trees and shrubs. I look forward to seeing you then, and in the meantime, if you want to come by the nursery and ask some questions or just shop around for plants, you know where to find us.
On your screen there's an email address. You can send any submission, ideas, feedback, critique. Just be gentle. I'm a sensitive guy after all, but you can send anything to that email address, and this is how we're going to build Village TV. Again, thank you for watching. I'll see you next week.